This is the opening line to Lucy Dacus' song, My Mother and I, and what a punch to the gut. Suddenly, I'm 13, already bigger than my mom, and she's cutting carbs. The paper cuts of adolescence come back, one by one. Last week, I went to see the film Girls Will Be Girls, written and directed by Suchi Talati. The film follows Mira, a 16-year-old girl attending a strict boarding school in the Himalayan foothills. She's a precocious straight-A student, and among the pressures of her school life, she strikes up a romance with Shri, a charming classmate, and thus begins her sexual awakening. As Mira grows closer to Shri, so does her mother, Anila, who also starts competing for Shri's attention, making for a two-headed coming-of-age story that at times made me so uncomfortable. One, because of the innate awkwardness of puberty, but also because of Anila. The whole theater would let out a groan whenever Anila would try to third wheel on Shri and Mira's dates. Anila is clearly unfulfilled by her marriage, and in the background of the film you learn how she was pressured by her family to marry very young. Despite that, I still remember sitting there thinking, why is she acting like this? She's literally a mom. When I walked out of the theater, I was moved by the film, but at the same time frustrated with myself for so immediately condemning Anila for expressing wants outside of being a mother. So in this video, we're going to explore the impossible expectations of motherhood and womanhood, and how mother and daughter are often pitted against each other.
All day, everyday therapist, mother made nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant.
The myth-making of motherhood demands that mothers be perfect, domestically skilled, and selfless. However, if a woman fails to embody this angelic state, if she's self-possessed, too career-driven, messy, then she is the bad mom, the witch or evil stepmother in the fairy tale. And while the expectations of mothers are certainly evolving, the lived realities of mothers speak to the fact that they are still facing these impossible expectations. For example, a 2015 survey from the Pew Research Center found that in America, 46% of two-parent households have a working mom and a working dad. Yet 41% of working mothers reported that parenting gets in the way of advancement at work, while only 20% of working fathers indicated the same feelings. A 2019 IFS report also had similar findings, stating that hours stagnate for working mothers while continuing to grow for fathers. Mothers are also disproportionately the default parent.
Hey, Mom! Hey, Mom! Hey, Mom!
And bear more of the mental load. Working mothers also come home from their jobs and do more cleaning, cooking, and caregiving compared to their male partners, a phenomenon that sociologist Arlie Hochschild has coined the second shift. These inequalities around motherhood can be in part attributed to the way we construct mothers. Even the praise we give mothers, she's a super mom, she does it all, normalize the fact that mothers do more work in the household than their male partners, and support expectations that being a mother is more demanding than being a father. Likewise, when we frame motherhood as a natural and innate state for women, we also help sanction this inequality. As Abby Arnold writes in her essay, The Rhetoric of Motherhood, motherhood is not a natural act, it is a learned one. The more education, resources, and economic security a woman has, the more effective a mother she will be. Arnold also argues that focusing solely on the idea of a mother's maternal nature as to why a woman is a skilled parent turns mothering into a passive act that denies the mother any consciousness or skill, and also shames her into believing she should be at all times the enthusiastic and gifted primary caretaker of her children, relieving any other person or group, including the father, from any real obligation. Being a young girl and watching your mom come home from work to clean and cook while your dad sits on the couch watching TV has an impact. Both parents might always encourage their daughter and tell her she can be anything, but the dynamics of the household show their daughter that women have a heavier burden to carry. Sometimes daughters can grow frustrated not only with their fathers, but their mothers. In influential feminist Adrienne Rich's book, Of Woman Born, Rich talks about how daughters can grow to resent their mothers for their struggles. She writes, "Many daughters live in rage at their mothers for having accepted too readily and passively whatever comes. A mother's victimization does not merely humiliate her, it mutilates the daughter, who watches her for clues as to what it means to be a woman." Complicating that, young girls can also identify more with their father and look down on what they see as their mother's passivity. As Bonnie Burstow writes in her 1992 book, Radical Feminist Therapy, often father and daughter look down on mother, together. They exchange meaningful glances when she misses the point. They agree that she is not as bright as they are, cannot reason as they do. This conclusion does not save the daughter from the mother's fate. Whether the daughter identifies with her mother or her father, the results are similar. Mothers are placed in an impossible bind that fuels conflict between her and her daughter.
I love it.
Is it too pink?
However, it's not just how daughters project onto their mothers that complicate mother-daughter relationships. It's also the internalized expectations of womanhood that mothers project onto their daughters. Just like the false binary of motherhood, there is a parallel false binary of womanhood, a perpetual battle of good girl versus bad girl, Madonna versus whore that mothers have been exposed to.
This is the correct length. Uniforms to your knees.
There's a scene in Girls Will Be Girls where Mira approaches one of the female teachers after discovering that the boys at school have been taking upskirt photos of female students as they walk up the stairs. When Mira asks her to punish the boys, the female teacher shakes her head and says, "This is why I tell you girls not to roll up your skirts. If these girls wore their skirts properly to their knees, this wouldn't happen." The female teacher, while not Mira's mother, is in a mentorship role. In this scene, she teaches Mira what many teachers, mothers, and fathers teach young girls, which is that they are responsible for male sexual violence. This is a pervasive rape myth, an idea that pervades in rhetoric used to discredit survivors of sexual assault. The extent to which women internalize this idea and project it onto their daughters may vary, but there is no doubt in a culture that believes female purity and virginity are ideals and female sexuality is dangerous, women will form complicated ideas about their own sexuality and the sexuality of other women. When I was in high school, I went with my mom to the grocery store in a green dress with a deep V cut. I don't know what emboldened me to do this. My mom was always the type to tell me to wear a camisole under anything, but I did. When we got home, she sat me down and asked me why. Why did I have to wear something like that? I fought back, the fight escalated. I remember her yelling, "You think this is okay? You don't know what men think." My dad came into the room, she turned to him, pointed at me, said, "Do you think this is okay?" My shame hit its peak and I ran to my room in tears. She came to me and apologized, told me she was worried about me, she would never blame me for anything. I was beautiful, but she also had experiences in her own life. She learned that men will use any excuse to take advantage of you. She had grown up in a conservative country where even just the fact of her birth as a girl was shameful. And she always wanted better for me, but she was scared. And at 15, I was too. We wept together in my bed. It's hard to be a daughter, a woman, to think of these moments and not wish for better. But real motherhood, like any long-term human relationship, is littered with mistakes, fights, anger, and compromise. In A Woman Born, Rich writes about the lasting wounds of feeling abandoned by your mother. Whether that's if she died, was an addict, worked long hours, we might rationally forgive her and feel her love and strength, but the child in us, who grew up in a male-controlled world, still feels at moments wildly unmothered. Rich writes that when we can confront and unravel this paradox, this contradiction, face to the utmost in ourselves the groping passion of that little girl lost, we can begin to transmute it. And the blind anger and bitterness that have repetitively erupted among women trying to build a movement together can be alchemized. In Girls Will Be Girls, Mira is told by the female teacher to talk to her friend Priya about not spending so much time with boys. When Mira confronts Priya, Priya rightfully calls Mira a hypocrite, pointing out Mira's relationship with Shri. Priya is not a perfect character either. She blames Mira for getting the boys who took the upskirt photos suspended. Their friendship is spoiled by harmful myths about female sexuality that they have inherited and are now projecting onto each other. It is true that we can never undo our mothers dieting in front of us, poking at our stomachs, telling us to cross our legs, protecting our fathers and brothers over us, then questioning our relationships and friendships with boys. But we can stop poking at ourselves in the mirror in front of our friends, saying, "I'm so fat," knowing in your audience each one of your female friends has felt the blade of that scrutiny herself. We can stop referring to other women's fashion choices as trashy and slutty, as if too much cleavage is a damning report on someone else's character. We can stop engaging in rituals of female shaming that we have inherited, yes, from our mothers, but also our teachers, fathers, friends, movies, and books. Because like Rich writes, this pain does not have to just sit with us. We do not have to let it poison every interaction we have with ourselves and other women. There is always the harder option, the transmutation. Lucy Dacus ends the song My Mother and I singing, "All she has given, all I have taken, all is forgiven, all is forsaken." What would it take to forgive our mothers for the pain they inflicted? What would it take to forsake the damage we pass on to other women? What would it take to transform it into something else?